Hi, hello, my name is Theo. Welcome to my first ever YouTube video. That's crazy. I started a Bookstagram back in January a couple of months ago, and I've really enjoyed using it, but I have discovered that I can't make review reels. I simply talk too much to make review video reels. I've made a couple. It was so hard. I had to talk so fast, and I couldn't do it. So I thought, why not try longer form content? So here I am, making my first YouTube video. Do I know how to edit videos? No, I do not. Do I have a good camera, or even a microphone, perhaps? No, I do not. I have my camera, a 100 yen tripod, and a dream. So in March, I read a total of 11 books, and my average rating was a 3.4, which I think is probably my lowest monthly average since I started tracking my books 3 or 4 years ago, I think. And I don't know if that's because I really just read bad books this month, or if I'm getting stricter with my ratings. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's both, to be honest. So I read 11 books. Only 3 of them were physical. I do not do a lot of physical books. 3 is kind of a lot for me, actually. So that's exciting. So I was trying to decide what order I wanted to do my March reviews in, whether I want to do chronologically or based on my rating. And I'm going to do based on my ratings so we can end on a good note. So we're going to start with my lowest first. That was actually kind of a lie. My first one is a book that I actually didn't rate at all. It's a textbook. I wanted to include it because I did read it. It is the N1 kanji textbook from Hajimete no Nihongo Noryoku Shiken. If you are studying Japanese and want to take the JLPT, I recommend the kanji and vocab books from this publisher. They're solid. But I didn't want to rate a textbook. It feels weird. But if I pass my exam in July, I will retroactively give this 5 stars. Okay, to move on to actual books. I did have one 1-star read this month, unfortunately, and it was not a book that I was really looking forward to reading. I was kind of dreading this one. I knew I wasn't gonna like it. But I'm doing a personal challenge to read all of the 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards nonfiction nominees. I really like nonfiction, but I don't see a lot of recommendations for nonfiction, so I figured that going through this list would kind of open me up to a lot more nonfiction, and it is. But it's also giving me some that I really, really don't like. So this first one is called Build the Life You Want by Arthur C. Brooks and Oprah Winfrey. And let's just get one thing out of the way. Oprah did not write this book. She funded it. She wrote some little paragraphs between a couple of the chapters. She jumped in for about 5 minutes out of this audiobook. This is not an Oprah book. Her name is just on the cover. Okay. I looked up Arthur C. Brooks before I started reading this, and I found out that he has written a book called The Conservative Heart: How to Build a Fairer, Happier, and More Prosperous America, which is interesting. So with that knowledge, I went into this book. And I think even without having that knowledge, I would have known this man as a conservative. This is a self-help book about trying to be happier. That's all it is. Yeah, it's pretty obvious that he's a conservative. One of the things he kept saying over and over when talking about interpersonal relationships is that politics doesn't matter. People let politics matter and it ruins their relationships. That's what he kept saying. And I think that's a little weird. He was even going so far as not just acquaintances or friends, but your romantic partner. Your partner. I think that politics really shows our fundamental values, our morals, the things that we care about, the way that we want to live our lives. And I'm not gonna go and date someone that just disagrees with my fundamental core values. So I cannot accept this argument that politics is just this little thing that doesn't matter, and once we move beyond it, we can really be happy. No, I don't believe that. I'm okay with people who I kind of disagree with, but I'm not gonna go and date a Trump supporter. I'm not gonna go be friends with a Trump supporter, you know? And he was really just saying that we should. No thank you. No thank you. So I really hated how much the importance of politics in your personal life just like got pushed to the side. Like, that doesn't matter. That's keeping you from being happy. Like, I don't know about that, but okay. And then there's also the whole argument about like when kids come back home from being at college and suddenly they just start fighting with their parents and saying that their parents have bad views and everything. And it was just the whole like, oh, the liberal colleges are brainwashing our kids, like fear mongering from the right. That's all that was. He was trying to kind of hide it and not really say that out loud, but like that's what it was. And then also spirituality and religion was really important in this book. It was really emphasized how important that is in your life and like trying to become happy. And I just don't really agree with that. I think that plenty of people can live happy, fulfilling lives without religion or spirituality. So I didn't like the argument that it was a necessary part of your life. I'm just not sure that there's really a part of this book that I really enjoyed or that I really got anything from. It felt like a waste of time, and I was glad this audiobook was only 6 hours. And listening to that shit on double speed, only 3 hours of my life were wasted. Oprah, why did you make me read this? Then I also had one 2-star read this month, and this was also from my Goodreads Choice Award nominee challenge. So clearly getting a nomination is not an indication of whether a book is actually going to be worthwhile or not. This book was Monsters: A Fan's Dilemma. This book was basically just about cancel culture and trying to figure out like how you should go about interacting with media that you really love that has been created by people that turned out to be really not good. The first few chapters, probably the first half of this book, was just kind of introducing someone that's been canceled, saying what they've done, saying why they've been canceled, and then just rinse and repeat. It was like Woody Allen, J.K. Rowling, like, you know, all the classics. And it was nothing I hadn't heard before. If you are online even a little bit, if you know even a little bit about celebrities and pop culture, you're gonna know everything that this author is saying in the first half of the book. And then I didn't really think that she answered her own question of like how you should interact with these pieces of media. I know that there's not really an answer to it, so maybe that's unfair, but I didn't even feel like she had anything like thought-provoking to say about it, which kind of felt like a waste of time. It was just things that I've read on Twitter before, like a million times. The second half took like a huge shift. We really pivoted and we started talking about women as monsters, but not in the same sense of like transphobia, rape, all of that stuff that we talked about in the first half. In the sense of like being absent mothers, but not even really absent mothers, being just mothers that like have a career and like do things outside of their children and are not literally with their children 24/7. And the argument wasn't that these women are monsters. The author even like said herself that she like takes time away from her kids so she can like sit down and write and focus on her work. She'll close the door to her office, and she said that she is one of these women, so she's not trying to say that they're awful and as bad as like, you know, Woody Allen or something. So I didn't really totally follow the argument here. I didn't really follow the thought progression here. I like kind of saw the vision, but I wasn't convinced, and I didn't really see the vision. I was very confused. It felt really weird. And I know she wasn't saying that these women are as bad as these people that we talked about in the first half. She wasn't saying that, but it still felt weird to even try to make a comparison there. It just felt really bizarre. The second half of the book, I was really just scratching my head a lot. It was very strange, I think. The first half was like fine, kind of boring because I already knew all the information, but the second half just had me like, what? What are we talking about? Huh? Girl, what are you saying? I was so confused. So it just felt really weird to compare these two groups of monsters to each other in any sense. So this was a really confused 2 stars from me. So then this month I had 3 3-star reads, the first of which is A Marvellous Light. So this is a queer historical fantasy set in Edwardian England, and we follow our main character, Robin, as he is appointed the civil service liaison for like this hidden magical society, and he doesn't even know that magic exists before he is given this job. He shows up to the first day of the job and finds out that magic exists. So he's like, what the hell is going on? His predecessor just disappears, so that's why they had to get a new person. So then we also have Edwin, who is his magical counterpart to this job. They kind of work together to try to find out what happened to Robin's predecessor, and they uncover so much. So it's really a huge, like, magical mystery. The best part of this book, by far, was the relationship between Robin and Edwin. Like, there was so much tension, there was so much chemistry, there were so many cute scenes. I was sitting here blushing, kicking my feet, my heart was thumping. That was definitely the highlight for me. Pretty much everything else was kind of fine, if maybe a little bit not good. So the plot, at first I was like, okay, I'm following, but then the longer we go, the more the plot just kind of falls apart for me. I didn't really understand a lot of like the how or the whys, like behind what a lot of the characters were doing, the decisions they were making, the things that they were thinking. I didn't really understand the reasoning behind it. And then the magic system was really unique. It was like string. It was explained as like cat's cradle. And I can't really explain it any more than that because I didn't really get it. It's such a unique premise, and I really wish that we like explored it a lot more. I think it could have been really interesting. But I didn't really understand it. I didn't really know what to picture. I was just kind of picturing them doing cat's cradle over and over and over. I didn't really understand the rules of this magic. I didn't really understand the bounds. There were rules and stuff, but I didn't really understand how they worked. So the magic system was a little bit confusing, and it could have been really cool, I think, but it just wasn't. I just kind of sat back and accepted what was happening with the plot and the magic. That's what I had to do. By the end of the book, I was really only reading for Robin and Edwin's relationship. That's all I cared about. The plot, I did not care. I'm sorry, I didn't care. I tried to care, but I just wanted to know how the relationship ended up. And there were just a lot of plot and world building issues for me, but I really liked the relationship in here. There are 2 more books in this series, but I do not see a future in which I pick them up. It was a fun little relationship, but the plot left a lot to be desired, unfortunately. My next 3-star book was Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity. This is another one for my Goodreads Choice Awards challenge. I'm really trying to finish this challenge, so I did a lot of them this month, but I'm waiting on like all the other holds. The hold lines are so long. Anyways, the description for this book is a groundbreaking manifesto on living better and longer that challenges the conventional medical thinking on aging and reveals a new approach to preventing chronic disease and extending long-term health from a visionary physician and leading longevity expert. So I think that there's a lot of good information to be learned in this book. I especially thought that the part about like medicine 2.0 and medicine 3.0 was really interesting. So medicine 2.0 is basically like what we do now for the most part. Like you get diagnosed with something like cancer or diabetes, and that's when you start treating it. But this book was really emphasizing how we should move more into medicine 3.0, which is all about preventative action. So it's really about looking at a patient's genetics and their risk factors, their habits, their life, and seeing like what they are at risk for and trying to get ahead of those and like take preventative measures like decades before these might actually become real problems. And the simplest example is like obviously smoking and lung cancer. So to do medicine 3.0 for, preventing lung cancer, you quit smoking or don't even start in the first place. So it's kind of like that, just a lot of preventative measures. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, and like it makes so much sense. Like, yeah, we should just be trying to prevent cancer and diabetes and all of these things if we can. But unfortunately, I think that a lot of the things that were suggested in this book, like doing genetic tests and body scans and using at-home medical tech and getting personalized workouts made for you. They're really expensive. Those things are really expensive. And I didn't think that this book really brought that up at all, which I think is weird, especially considering that this is like a health and medical book for Americans specifically. This is made for an American audience. And like with American healthcare, obviously the financial burden is like a huge thing to think about. So I thought it was weird that that wasn't talked about or considered at all in this book. Like obviously we would all like to go and get these tests and do preventative measures and have personalized workout programs and everything, but like that shit's expensive. That shit's really expensive. Most people can't do that. And then I was also thinking about how a lot of people go to the doctor and have issues and try to get help, but they aren't taken seriously. Doctors don't really like listen to them, especially women and people of color. So I was just trying to imagine like someone going to a doctor and requesting these genetic tests, asking about using some of these products like at home, and just being refused, being rejected, being told that they're crazy. I can see that happening. So I imagine to like do all the stuff recommended by this book, it would A, cost a lot of money, and B, take a lot of time to find doctors that are like willing to work with you for this, unfortunately. Like I think that the suggestions and recommendations were good, but there's just a lot of barriers to do these things, and that just wasn't talked about at all, which I didn't really like. And really, I think my biggest takeaway from this book was that like the best thing that an individual person can easily do for their health is exercise. And like, yeah, that makes sense. That wasn't really surprising to me, but there were some stats and studies introduced in the exercise section of this book that were pretty mind-blowing. They were very convincing. I need to start working out more. I know, I need to. So that was really my biggest takeaway from this book, the exercise section. This was like, it was okay. 3 stars. So my next 3-star book was my biggest disappointment of the month, quite honestly. This book has been on my TBR for so long, and it was one that I really wanted to make sure that I read this year. And it is The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. I have read The Goldfinch and The Secret History, and I loved them both. I thought I would eat up anything that Donna Tartt put down on paper, but clearly that's not the case. So I have literally never seen anyone talk about this book before, which is kind of crazy considering how stupidly popular Donna Tartt's 2 other books are. You would think that you'd see more people reviewing this book, giving it a try, but after reading it, I understand why I don't see it anywhere. The first chapter actually really pulled me in. I thought it was a really strong first chapter. It made me really excited to read the rest of the book. It basically sets the book up as like this murder mystery. A character is murdered in the first chapter, and it's like it is a shocking way of death. My jaw dropped. And it's really set up to like kind of follow that, but it doesn't. So then after the first chapter, we have a time skip of, I want to say like 10 years or so, and we follow our main character, Harriet, who is the little sister of Robin, who died in the first chapter. And you really think that she's just like gonna take on this murder mystery, and she kind of does. She does spend some time investigating her brother's mysterious death, but that really just is not the main focus of what we're doing. I don't even know how to explain the plot. I'm not really sure that there even was a plot. So we're like following Harriet through her daily life in this summer. It's the summer that she does decide to start investigating her brother's death, but that's just not what we're really focusing on. She investigates for about like 2 seconds. That's it. That's the investigation. And then the rest of the book is question mark? I don't know, snakes? The rest of the book is snakes, pretty much. There are a lot of snakes in this book. Let me tell you, there are so many snakes in this book. This became a snake book. You hit about 40 or 50% in this book. Snake book. This book is about snakes. I'm not even like that bad about snakes. I kind of like snakes, But there were so many parts where I was like, oh my god, this is this is too much. This is crazy. So if you really don't like snakes, don't read this book. Stay far away from this book. If you have an intense fear of snakes, do not read this. It was kind of crazy. It may have been my favorite part of the book. I kind of liked the snakes. Anyways, that's not really what the book is about, but I don't know what the book's about. When I finished reading it, I was just kind of like, okay. And what was I supposed to get from this? What was I supposed to end feeling? I don't know. I don't know what I was supposed to do with this book. I don't know. It was really disappointing. And then unlike The Goldfinch and The Secret History, this book has multiple POVs, which for the most part, I really hated. I really did. I liked Harriet's POV. I thought that was relatively interesting, kind of fun. But then the other POVs were just so boring. They were so boring and they felt so long and drawn out. And I didn't really know what I was supposed to be getting from those parts. I did feel like in the last act of the book, the multiple POVs kind of worked. It kind of worked for me in the last part of the book. But did that make up for, I don't know, 560 pages? 560 pages where it wasn't working, where I hated it, where I was mad every time it changed away from Harriet? No, I don't think it was. I don't think it was. So there were parts of this book I enjoyed. There were scenes that I enjoyed. But it was a lot of just boring, meandering, plotless words. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know. When I finished reading, I just felt confused and lost. And like I had wasted quite a bit of time on this, unfortunately. I was really looking forward to this, so womp womp. So then this month I had 2 4-star books and 2 4.5-star books. So the first 4-star book was Ultra Processed People. This is a nonfiction health and science book about ultra-processed food and its effect on our health. And yes, this is another one from my Goodreads Choice Awards nominees challenge. Yes, it is. So ultra-processed food is really hard to define, but basically it's something that's made with ingredients that like you aren't gonna find in your own kitchen. You're not gonna find in anyone's kitchen. Additives, preservatives, flavoring, and high fructose corn syrup are all huge staples of ultra-processed food. One thing that I did really like about this book was that it was not a diet book. This author was not trying to tell you how to live, how to eat, what to eat, how much to eat. He even said that even after like all this research, he doesn't eat ultra-processed food anymore, but he lets his kids eat it. He doesn't really care who eats it. So I thought that this book was a really insightful and in-depth look at the science of this food and what eating it does to our bodies. And this book talked a lot about how people are addicted to this food, but it wasn't blaming people for being addicted to it. It's blaming the companies. The companies know what they're doing. They're making food that is highly addictive and not healthy. And then I really enjoyed the analysis of capitalism in this book. That was really unexpected for me. I just thought it was going to be about food and health, but then we kind of pivoted to capitalism. I was like, oh damn, this author speaks my language. So we're talking about the marketing of the products and how harmful that is, especially how a lot of these ultra-processed foods are marketed specifically like to children, and how these companies exploit food deserts and low-income communities, and also the environmental impact of this kind of food. Like the ingredients get processed in one part of the world and shipped to another part of the world to become something else, and then they're shipped back to this other part of the world to like make the final product. And that final product is shipped everywhere around the world. It's crazy. I've never really thought about the environmental impact of like a bag of chips or something. So that was really eye-opening, honestly. And after reading this book, like I'm not gonna say I'm gonna cut ultra-processed food out of my diet, but I have become a lot more aware of what I'm eating, how I'm interacting with my food, and how my food makes me feel. I have become so much more aware of that since reading this. I rated this 4 stars. I totally recommend it. especially to anyone who thinks that they might have an addictive relationship to snacking and ultra-processed food. So my next 4-star read was Blue Light Hours, and I got this arc from NetGalley. This book comes out on October 15th. This book follows the evolving relationship between a mother and a daughter as the daughter moves 4,000 miles away from her home in Brazil to start studying at a college in Vermont. This was a really short and fast read, and I really loved it. The vibes were vibing. This really showcases simple, everyday life. It's quite monotonous, but it felt like so much more than that. The writing felt really dreamlike and emotional, and it created such a nostalgic atmosphere. A lot of this was told through Skype calls, and a lot of times when I read books that use technology, do texting, social media, any of that stuff, it can feel really corny, and most of the time I'm just not really a fan of it. I prefer technology to kind of stay out of my books, but I thought that this was so good. I really liked the way that the Skype calls were done in this book, and they just felt so emotional and so real, and you could just feel the relationship between this mother and daughter. And I also happen to live 4,000 miles away from my home and all of my family, and this was just such a comforting read. I felt so comforted and warm and emotional and nostalgic, and I just felt a lot of my own experiences and emotions in this book. And I think that anyone who has moved away from their family, moved away from their hometown, even if it's not 4,000 miles, will be able to feel a lot of their experiences in this book and be able to see their own relationships. It's just really nice. It's just really comforting. I totally recommend this when it comes out. Then moving on to my 4.5-star reads. My first one was She Loves to Cook, She Loves to Read, Volume 5. This series follows Nomoto, who loves to cook, but she lives alone, so she always she makes way too much food. She can't eat all of it, but she wants to cook all the time, so it's a problem. And her neighbor, Kasuga, who happens to love to eat. Truly a match made in heaven. Am I right? This volume is not out in English yet, so I'm not going to say too much, but it is my favorite volume of the series so far. It is my favorite volume so far. It's so cute. It just made me blush. There were times where I had to put it down and just, squeal a little bit. I don't know. It's so cute. They're so cute. I love their relationship. I just think that this story is just so nice and so sweet. And if you are just looking for a sweet little GL romance manga, you should pick up She Loves to Cook, She Loves to Eat. And also, another bonus, I started reading this series in January. I have been cooking so much since then. I don't know if it's because of this manga or not, but I think it might be connected. I think it's probably connected. So if you want to start cooking more, you should pick this up. You'll be inspired. So then my next 4.5-star read is yet another Goodreads Choice Award nominee challenge. I'm sorry, there's so much fiction in this video. This one was Trail of the Lost, the relentless search to bring home the missing hikers of the Pacific Crest Trail. So this one follows the author, who has a lot of experience as a park ranger leading searches for missing people. As she volunteers, she no longer works as a park ranger, as she volunteers to search for 3 missing hikers on the Pacific Crest Trail. I'm not really a huge true crime person, that's just not for me, but I am really outdoorsy. I've done a backpacking trip, I do day hikes, I love climbing mountains, I love the outdoors. So this was a really interesting read for me. I didn't really know anything about the process of looking for lost hikers. It was really fascinating to learn about, and honestly kind of terrifying, because nature, she's fucking scary. This was a little bit terrifying to read. I just had no idea how much these search and rescue missions depended on volunteers. That was kind of mind-blowing to me. I had no idea. It's entirely volunteer run. The police will maybe do a little investigation, but after a week at most, it just seems to fall into the volunteers' hands entirely. And it's really amazing to read about like the compassion and the drive of these volunteers who are searching for people and trying to help families that they've never met. They have no connection to these people. They're just doing this because they want to help. I think that's amazing. I had no idea that people did this. It was really amazing to see like the lengths that people will go to try to help strangers. That part was kind of heartwarming, but a lot of the rest of the book was really sad and emotional, quite a painful read. I did cry a couple times, if I'm gonna be really honest. I will say that there is kind of a significant chunk of this book that is all about psychics. So if that's not your cup of tea, just be warned. I don't know how I felt about that part. I totally understood why the volunteers and the families kind of turned towards the psychics, because you kind of run out of options at a certain point. So I got why they did it, but I am very full of skepticism. So I don't know, I felt a little iffy about that part. But overall, I really enjoyed this. It was so engaging, so interesting. I learned a lot, but mostly I learned to not mess around with nature. No, nature's scary. I love her, but she scares me. So we are at the end of the video. I had one 5-star book in March. And this is a book that most people have probably been seeing around on Bookstagram and Booktube and Book Talk and all of the bookish things for the last handful of months. This is Minor Detail. So the description is, Minor Detail begins during the summer of 1949, 1 year after the war that the Palestinians mourn as the Nakba, the catastrophe that led to the displacement and expulsion of more than 700,000 people, and the Israelis celebrate as the War of Independence. Israeli soldiers capture and rape a young Palestinian woman and kill and bury her in the sand. Many years later, a woman in Ramallah becomes fascinated to the point of obsession with this minor detail of history. I didn't know how else to describe this book. I just felt like the description does it best. It is really heavy. This is a heavy book. She is little, yes, but she is mighty. Yeah, so the first half is really factually written. It's written like a report of an incident, which is exactly what it is. But it is a little weird to kind of get into at first, because it's just so unlike anything I've read, that style of writing. So it just feels really stilted and emotionless, but like that's exactly what it's trying to do. Once I got into the second half, I read it like that. I read it in one sitting. It was really engaging, really emotional, really sad. So I've heard so much about what daily life in Palestine looked like, before October 7th, under Israeli occupation, like about the checkpoints and everything. Like, I'd heard a lot about it, but this book, I think, is where I really understood what that kind of meant and looked like for the first time. Just the process of renting a car and then trying to drive to a museum. Just trying to do those two things was crazy. Yeah, to just kind of read about what daily life was like, pre-genocide, under Israeli occupation, is just really gut-wrenching and eye-opening, and just the amount of fear and violence and death that Palestinians experience just in their everyday life is, I don't have a word for it. I want to say crazy, but like that's not the right word. I don't know. Once I finished reading this, I literally just had to sit here and just sit and stare and think. I didn't know what to do with myself after finishing this book. It was really powerful and emotional, and I am tearing up just thinking about it. I'm not gonna cry in my first video. No, I'm not gonna cry on camera. So yeah, this was really powerful and I recommend it. Be sure to look up trigger warnings. It is quite heavy, but I highly, highly recommend it to everyone. So on that really uplifting note, that is the end of my video. Those were all of my March reads. I'm hoping that next month in April, I'll have a little more highs than lows. Maybe this month I won't have a 1-star. That's my ask. I don't want a 1-star in April. So see you next time. Bye.